I'm gonna tell you a story, my story, and it's as real as life itself, exactly as I lived it, unfiltered and unedited. This isn't a fairy tale where a prince rescues you, nor is it an urban legend. It's living proof that starting from humble beginnings, you can achieve what seems impossible. How? I managed to slip onto a cruise ship and work there. And before you imagine something idyllic, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Today, with the perspective that years and experience give, I tell you that a job on a cruise ship is no bed of roses. The work is hard, very hard, for 10 months a year. The pay often isn't significantly better than a good job on land. So why am I here telling you this? Because if you're young, with the world ahead of you and more dreams than money in your pocket, it's an experience you must live. Do it not for the salary, but because they will pay you to travel. Because you will see the world without spending a single cent of your own. Because you will truly live with people from dozens of different cultures, and that will open your mind in a way no book or documentary ever could. You'll learn practical lessons, yes, but above all, you will grow tremendously as a human being. The experience, I assure you, is incredible and is one of the most enriching you could ever give yourself. How did I travel the world several times? It's a question I sometimes ask myself quietly. I've visited almost 100 countries, 100 different skies, smells of spices in the sea, languages that sound like unknown music. I've collected a bit of the soul of each culture, like a collector of good souls. And I achieved this originally coming from a very poor country, and within that poor country, being from a very poor city, and within that city, being from the rural area, from a family that had nothing but calloused hands and fragile roofs against hurricanes. We were a family with very few material possibilities, but with dreams and a drive so colossal, so absurdly huge that it was able to pull me out of there, to launch me into the world like an arrow. Here, I tell you the story of how I got myself a job on a cruise ship with no help, only God's, and an obstinacy that was my only capital. As a child, my window to the universe was an old black and white television we had at home, an ancient device that crackled and flickered as if it struggled to keep the magic alive in it. On a random day of the week, I would see a movie. It didn't matter which one. Each one was a portal, and I dreamed. I daydreamed about something beyond my immediate reality. Though, to be honest with you, my surroundings, my family, everything around me, the little one-room schoolhouse, for me, everything was very happy. I've come to the conclusion that happiness isn't in people. It's not in what surrounds you. It's not in your circumstances. I honestly believe happiness is a seed that only grows inside you. If you're bitter by nature, you can be surrounded by gold and you'll still be a bitter person. Me, God, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, blessed me with constant happiness and optimism, an internal spring that never dried up. And so, as a child, I watched those movies and dreamed of those impossible places. I dreamed of knowing the world, of going beyond. Even though within my own country, I never traveled more than a few kilometers. I couldn't. For me, that was a physical and economic impossibility. And school, I loved school. It wasn't a punishment, it was a feast. I went with a thirst for learning that was almost a vice. I remember one of my teachers, a woman with a tired smile but eyes full of light, who during lunch hour, while the other children nibbled their bread, would tell us stories. I remember every word of those stories, how I was able to travel in my mind, to ride a carpet over golden deserts, to be with Sinbad on the high seas, to bargain with a genie in a wonderful lamp. My imagination always flew. It was my first passport. And in that imagination, though I'm not promoting the secret theory that just by wanting something it will come, in my case, it happened because that longing wasn't passive, it was an engine. Furthermore, in my city, which was a few kilometers from the capital, we saw the planes every day passing overhead as they approached to land at the airport. It was a daily ritual, the distant roar that became a whistle, and then a silver shadow crossing the blue sky. Every day you could feel them, see those planes, and I, from the dirt yard of my house, dreamed of being on one of them, being that tiny speck in the firmament headed for the unknown. And so I grew up, learning, working small jobs, dreaming. And regarding learning languages, I loved English. It came to me almost naturally, as if my brain was waiting for those sounds. I went to school eager, with desire. In fact, I was good at all subjects, with an ease I'm grateful for, but English was my secret love. I liked speaking it, reading it, deciphering it. I didn't suffer through it much thanks to that hungry attitude for knowledge. I kept getting scholarships, small achievements that were like steps on a very high mountain. One fine day, I was a college graduate, precisely with a degree in English. My family's pride was tangible, but reality was a wall. I started working in my hometown, teaching at a little school with a paltry salary, a wage that barely grazed subsistence, and I realized with a clarity that chilled my blood that if I didn't do something radical, I was going to stay there, aging in the same grid of dirt streets. I then decided to head to the capital, looking for other job offers close to tourism, that world that generated tips, that generated dollars, and what they asked for most was fluent language skills. And so I went, turning, going, and turning from office to office with a hope as fragile as glass. One fine day, the rumor materialized. They told me about an office that hired people to work on cruise ships. It was like an urban legend for many. I approached, and yes, they always had their doors open for you to sign up, but it was like a farce, a mirage. It was more to excite people than anything, because the raw reality was that if you didn't have a good connection, a friend of a friend of a friend, or money to grease some palms, you were never going to get off that endless waiting list. I didn't have a penny.
I didn't have it. And then the good thing happened. A foreign cruise line came to my country, Norway. They wanted to hire thousands of people. They saw my poor country as a source of cheap labor, or at least that's what I thought then, with skepticism tinged with bitterness. Over time, that cruise line turned out to be much more efficient and humane than it initially seemed. But that's another part of the story. Let's get to what happened. Getting accepted onto those waiting lists at that local cruise office wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. You needed that friend, that contact, that money. I had none of that. And one fine day, news spread like wildfire in a dry field. The Norwegian cruise line would come to hire personnel directly. That was the explosion. Everyone in the city and all the nearby towns to the capital wanted to be part of those cruises, of that ticket out. So I went that day to present myself to sign up on the lists, thinking with a naivety that now touches me that this time I finally had everything to win. But no. When I got there, the spectacle was Dante-esque. There were more people than at a Sunday Mass in the Vatican. It was too much. It was literally too much. There were thousands, I'm being literal, thousands of people crammed outside the office door, all well-dressed in their finest clothes, all holding their folders of documentation hugged to their chests like a shield. I was one among thousands, a grain of sand in a desert of ambitions. And so we stood outside to wait. There were no benches. You couldn't sit on the curb because you'd dirty the only presentable trousers you had. You had to stand there, impeccable, under a merciless sun. And to top it off, it turned out the person who was going to do the interviews, whose name I'll call Maria Elena, had some family complication and wasn't coming to work that day. A person would come out to the door, a young woman with a worried face, and speak loudly to the crowd. Every time the door opened, we all rushed forward like a single wave, and she would say, "Folks, please, the person who is going to conduct the interviews isn't here at the office because she has a family problem. She'll come later and we'll start the interviews." And she came out 3, 4 times, I don't remember anymore, during the day to give the update on the absence. She's not coming, right? Or rather, she can't come yet. She hasn't arrived. She still hasn't arrived. She never said specifically she's not coming, only that she hadn't arrived yet. And the day passed slowly, heavily, like liquid lead. I had the exact money, exactly. I had the money to get to the capital, to the cruise office, and I had in my pocket, counted to the penny, the money for the return tickets. There was no margin. I couldn't buy water, a sandwich, a soda, nothing. I had to endure with an empty stomach, a dry mouth as the day advanced. Little by little, people left, defeated by hunger, tiredness, or frustration. The thousands became hundreds, the hundreds became tens, and at 4 in the afternoon, under a now golden and weak light, only I remained standing in front of the office with my folder under my arm, a solitary sentinel of my own hope. I'm looking at it now as if it were a photograph in my mind. Me, a thin young man, with his suit starting to wrinkle, alone before a closed door. At that hour, the same girl who had been giving the updates on her co-worker's absence came out, looked at my face with a mix of pity and annoyance, and said, "Young man, Maria Elena isn't going to come today. She's not coming today." There was nothing more to say. At that hour, with my heart like a stone, I left to make the journey of several hours back home to my hometown. That didn't stop me from leaving very early the next day, the second day, from my hometown, again with only the exact money for a round-trip ticket in my pocket like a talisman of poverty. I headed to the cruise office. At 7 in the morning, I was already standing outside like a faithful follower on vigil. At 9 a.m., they opened the doors, and again we were thousands of people outside waiting. It must have been around 9:30 when the same girl of the updates came out and, yelling into the air, said, "Folks, good morning. Miss Maria Elena, who is going to conduct the interviews, is still dealing with a domestic family problem, and today she is supposedly going to arrive. What we don't know is at what time. We ask you please to be patient, and we'll keep waiting." And there were 2 more updates, 2 more acts of that same hour-long theater, one around 11 in the morning and another at 2 in the afternoon. By the 2 p.m. update, there were fewer than 10 of us left outside waiting, a group of resistors, of stubborn ones. The girl told us, the last in line, that Maria Elena wasn't going to come. But this time, although she spoke to everyone, she looked only at me, as if recognizing in my persistence a madness worthy of note. I gathered my things, my folder, my empty stomach, which was now stabbing in my spine, and I returned to my hometown again, several hours back home, with the bitter taste of defeat again in my mouth. The 3rd day arrived, and again at 7 in the morning I was already at the cruise office. But that 3rd day the scene had changed. We weren't thousands, we were only about 200, maybe a little more, but we were a manageable group, a decimated herd. And there we were, the most obstinate ones, those who had no other place to go. 9 a.m. arrived. The cruise office workers began to enter. I didn't know any of them, only the girl who gave the updates, almost an acquaintance by now. And this time, among the people entering, one of them, by the description and the murmur that ran through the crowd, was Maria Elena. I saw her turn the corner toward the cruise office door, and immediately all the people approached the door like a swarm. Me too. It was like paparazzi harassing a celebrity, the celebrity of my future. Maria Elena, a woman with a serious bearing and a folder in her hands, could hardly advance toward the door. She stopped, looked at all of us with a gaze that swept the crowd, and said with a clear voice that cut through the murmur, "Folks, good morning. In a few minutes, I will begin the interview in the exact order I have listed. If someone isn't here, they lose their turn, and we move to the next. Please be patient. I'll start calling shortly."
And she entered the office, leaving us in a state of collective tension. It must have been 9:10, 9:15 in the morning when the receptionist girl, the one from the updates, came out to the door again. I later found out she was exactly that, the receptionist. She spoke to all of us. "Folks, please pay attention. We are going to call by list order. Please wait on the sidewalk across the street so we don't have a crowd here at the door, and we will interview all of you today. It's going to happen." And then, all of a sudden, without me expecting it, without being able to foresee it, without my already tired heart daring to harbor another hope,
She raised her right hand and her index finger, pointing directly at me through the small crowd, and said, "Young man, you are going to be the first. Just follow me. Come on in." A silence fell within me. The world around me blurred. I was the first to be seen that day. I was the first to be interviewed. I was the first to be approved that day. I entered the VIP lists of the cruise office. I earned that. It wasn't luck. It was 3 days of relentless sun, of a growling hunger, and of a weight that drives you mad, that eats you from the inside. That ox-like patience, that mule-like stubbornness was my only leverage. I found out later, in the murmur of the hallways, that the Norwegian cruise line needed thousands of people urgently, and that the cruise office suddenly found itself obliged to show it had real, fresh people to send. The old lists, the ones based on connections, had aged. Those people were on to other things, had lost their drive. I wasn't one of them. I was available, fresh, hungry, and ready. I went to the interviews they scheduled with the Norwegian Cruise Line. The representatives were serious people with direct gazes. What mattered most to them, I knew immediately, was that you spoke good, fluent, natural English. And in that, I was already good. In fact, I was a teacher, and I did well. I gave an impeccable interview in English. They asked me about my life, my aspirations, and I answered with confidence. The language wasn't a barrier, it was my bridge. Then they started asking me about tourism, about services, and here, as if by a stroke of intuition, everything I had read and absorbed in my poorly paid job near the tourism industry bloomed. I talked about gastronomy, customer service protocols, a bit of hospitality, even wines and basic kitchen concepts. Though at home, to be honest, I couldn't even fry an egg well. I laid out everything I knew with a passion that was genuine. That seemed to impress. It wasn't common, they told me later, for someone to speak the language well and also know, even if only theoretically, about the industry. The process ended and the Norwegian company selected from the initial thousands approximately 50 people they would hire directly and urgently. Others, almost 1,000, would be on a waiting list for a second round. And in my case, the miracle was realized. My name was on the list of the 50. A week later, they posted the results on a big board. Seeing my name there, not beyond number 20, was like reading my sentence of freedom. A tingling ran through my whole body. Right around that time, like a twist of fate, I got a tourism job very close to the cruise office. Not even 10 days had passed since the selection, and life seemed to want to test me. And then they called all 50 of us fortunate ones to get our passports made. Not just any passport, but a special seaman's passport, a document that smelled of salt and distance. Then they sent us to take some seaman's courses that lasted 15 days. What should have been a joy was a brutal logistical problem. For those 15 days, I had to quit the job I already had. They were 15 days from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon with iron discipline. If you arrived 1 minute late, and I'm not exaggerating, they shut the door in your face and you lost the course forever. What I learned inside wasn't a big deal. Basic notions of ship safety, knots, emergency protocols, sailor stuff. But it was the requirement. And I didn't even have money for the daily commute. Remember, I lived in a rural town near the capital. My parents, seeing my determination, helped me. They gathered coin by coin, gave me just enough for the daily round-trip ticket and a miserable sandwich at noon. With that, I had to endure the long day. And I did. I went happily. I went contentedly. My cheerful and optimistic nature turned that sacrifice into an adventure. Life for me was like that, a challenge faced with a smile. I still am that way today. The course ended, and then with the certificate in hand and the seaman's passport in the folder came another one of those coincidences that seemed divine. I was so lucky, or so blessed by God, put it how you want to see it, that the same job I had lost because of the course called me. They wanted me back. I got the job again. It was almost a miracle that this happened.
an air cushion just before the leap into the void. I returned to my job, poorly paid, but with some tips that were a relief, and I settled back into the routine. I worked one day on, one day off, and often finished work at 2 in the morning. At that hour, there was no transportation whatsoever to my hometown. So, with the owner's permission, I would push some chairs together in a corner of the restaurant, stretch out on them like a luxury vagabond, and sleep there until 6 in the morning, the hour when public transport started. Then I would get up sore and head to my town. 2 months had already passed since the interview with the Norwegian company. The urgent contract was an echo fading away. Supposedly, they were going to call us any minute, but the phone at a neighbor's house, the only one on the block that had an old landline phone, one of those with a dial, a luxury in the area, and we all used it as a reference, never rang with that news for me.
So, in an act of faith and desperation, every single blessed day that I worked and finished at 2 a.m., instead of giving up and sleeping on the chairs, I did something I now see as crazy. I walked. It was almost 2 miles through a city that fortunately was very safe. I walked every early morning with weariness stuck to my bones to the cruise office. There, on the outside, they had a bulletin board where they posted notices, news, calls. I would stand in front of it under the dim light of a street lamp and scrutinize every word, every new piece of paper, looking for my name, a date, a destination. And night after night, there was nothing. Nothing and absolutely nothing. There was never any news. My hopes, that fierce energy that had brought me there, began to wane, dripping away like a candle burning down. It sank to the point that deep inside I began to believe it wasn't going anywhere, that it had been another dream, beautiful but unreal. One fine day, since I was from the country and depended on public transport that wasn't bad, it was terrible, I left my house almost at 4 in the morning to be at my work by 10. It was a trip that, if everything went well, lasted an hour. But if everything went well, was a prayer. You might not arrive and lose the job. That's why I made sure things went well. I left with so much time to spare that sometimes I arrived in the capital with hours to kill. It meant I was never late, that I was a reliable employee, but also that sometimes I had long dead spaces waiting for my shift to start. One of those days, with my heart already a little shrunken from the lack of news, I decided to change my ritual. Instead of going to the cruise office in the cold early morning, I went in the morning during business hours. This time, I wasn't going to look at a mute bulletin board. I was going to talk to people, to ask, to demand an answer. I went, entered, and with a voice I tried to keep firm, I asked, "What happened with the 50? Are we going? Aren't we going? What happened?" The receptionist, the same one from the updates, recognized me, looked for me on the list, and her eyes opened a little. "You know what?" she said, lowering her voice. "Yes, they have been calling people to work, but some haven't been ready or haven't wanted to go at the last minute. Right now, they've asked for 5 more and none of the people called can go." She looked at me fixedly. "Please, go to the other office and talk to Mr. Alex to see what he tells you." A violent heartbeat in my chest. I entered Mr. Alex's office, a man with an unfriendly face and mountains of papers on his desk. "Good morning, Mr. Alex," I introduced myself. He looked for me on a list, glanced through some folders. "Yes, you're here," he said without fully looking up. "By the way, you have a very good score, but we haven't called you because I see here in the system that you're missing some documentation. And while we sort that out, we're going to lose this opportunity to give employment to other young people." My blood ran cold. "Documentation? Something was missing?" I asked with a voice a bit broken. "What document was missing?" He began to enumerate Seaman's passport, courses, certificates, etc., etc. And I, who lived far away and for whom an extra trip could mean not eating, always carried a special folder, my most precious treasure. It was a modest folder, but inside, all my documentation was sealed in plastic, clean, neat, presentable, in perfect order. With a quick movement, almost a reflex, I pulled out my folder, opened the plastic, and told him, with a confidence born from the depths of my desperation, "No, sir, I have everything here." And I began to take out my documents one by one, like showing the cards of a winning poker hand.
Furthermore, I added, noticing a detail on his desk, my passport with number such and such, I don't remember the number now, is there in your drawer. You can look for it. I knew by a hunch that my passport, once issued, had ended up in that office. Mr. Alex stayed quiet for a moment, then looked at the drawer of his desk, opened it, and began to search not by name, but by the number I had told him. And there it was. He pulled out my seaman's passport, held it in his hands, looked towards me, and then, for the first time, a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. He looked me in the eyes and said, "People like you are going to go very far." That phrase, at that precise moment, gave me an emotion I can't explain. It wasn't just a compliment, it was a recognition. It was as if someone finally saw not my poverty, but my potential. It was something incredibly great, something that touched an intimate fiber, the fiber of dignity. It was great. And then everything was quick. He took a stamp, a sheet, stamped it, signed it with an energetic gesture, got up, went somewhere, talked to someone, and returned. And he told me, and these words are engraved in fire, "Son, you earned it. The job is yours. Pack your things. In 72 hours, you leave for England." Imagine me, poor country, poor city, poor family, poor, all of a sudden with a plane ticket in my hands, free. For me, someone paid for it. I didn't. I left that office, the one I had only gone to ask a timid question. I left with 2 plane tickets in my hand, one to Madrid and another from Madrid to England. In 72 hours, I would be on a plane to other parts of the world. I could hardly believe it. The world became blurry from pure happiness. I returned to my work. I don't remember the city blocks. I was floating. So many things ran through my mind. The plane, the sea, England, the old black and white television. I returned, spoke to my boss, showed him the tickets as if they were sacred relics, and told him that I was willing to finish the day working so not to create chaos for him. Because in those tourism places, they always work with the minimum possible staff, and if one person is missing, it's a serious problem. He looked at me surprised and said that was fine to work the shift, but he already knew that for my next scheduled shift, I wouldn't be there, which surprised me.
It must have been around 2 in the afternoon. The restaurant was full of customers. That day, my boss approached and told me they were inviting me to lunch. At that same place where I spent every day serving with a smile, they seated me at a table like any other customer. He said, "This is your farewell. Fly, son, fly. Fly and achieve things." They served me like a king. It was an act of pure kindness. Finishing lunch, one of my coworkers approached and thanked me for having given up my shift. He was at home with nothing to do, and they called him to come work, and he came. We all wanted to work. You made tips, and that's how we lived. And there, with a lump in my throat, I understood that my boss, in an act of great generosity, was already replacing me so I could go home, so I could prepare, pack my things, and say goodbye properly. I thanked him with a full heart. I said goodbye to everyone and left. On my way home, I was also walking as if in a dream. This time, I protected my folder with my documentation more than ever. It was my key, my safe conduct pass. In that era, there were no cell phones. In my house, there was no landline phone, one of the old ones. We didn't have one, so I couldn't warn them ahead of time. I arrived home. It must have been 6 in the evening. I showed everyone my plane tickets, told them what had happened. At first, they almost didn't believe me. There was a moment of silence, of disbelief. In fact, for an instant, they seemed worried, thinking if I had already lost my steady job for a pipe dream. But it wasn't like that. I showed the physical tickets with the logos, dates, times. Everyone little by little understood it was real. A spontaneous party for me formed, a farewell with the little we had. I had to prepare for the trip, and for me, preparing was the simplest thing in the world. It was taking the only backpack I had, a worn but sturdy backpack, and putting inside the little underwear I had, 2 t-shirts, a spare pair of pants, the only decent pair of shoes I owned I was going to wear. It wasn't a problem. I had no more. There was nothing else to do. No complex paperwork, no onerous purchase. My poverty made the preparation an act of absolute simplicity. And the day arrived. The
The day of the flight, a family friend with a borrowed car took me to the airport. Me, inside an airport for the first time, was an alien. I didn't know what to do, where to go, how to read the screens, what a terminal was. But it happens like with everything in life. It's very intuitive. Either you know what to do, or the signs guide you, or people seeing your lost face help you. 4 hours after entering that new and dazzling world, I was in the air, flying to Madrid. It was a journey of many hours in which I couldn't sleep a wink, watching out the window as my country became a miniature and then disappeared under the clouds. When I arrived at the Madrid airport, everything was a rush. In 30 minutes, I had to catch my next flight, the connection to England. I ran, followed directions, managed to board, and off I went. I arrived in England, and this time, like in the movies I watched as a kid on the black and white TV, there was a man standing at arrivals with a sign on which my name was written. It was quick. I approached. "That's me," I said. It was the first time in my life I was speaking with a foreigner in a foreign country who spoke English with someone whose mother tongue was English. It was a bit traumatic, to be honest. Academic English, teacher's English, isn't the same as colloquial English spoken quickly with a native accent. I stammered a bit, but I adapted. He was kind, a driver contracted by the company. He took me in a very nice, clean, and quiet car to a hotel because the ship would arrive the next day. And so I spent my first night in England in a soft, anonymous hotel bed, still unable to believe the surreal twist of my life. The next day, a taxi picked me up. I didn't pay for anything. Besides, I didn't even have money. Everything was paid by the company, a concept that amazed me. They took me to the port, and there it was, enormous, white, imposing, like a floating mountain. My cruise ship, my new life, my new life. They put me on board, and there everything began. My years working on cruise ships began. They were several years of much happiness, of much hard work, of endless days and nights full of stories of other passengers and crewmates of 1,000 nationalities. I earned very well, not by a European standard, but for the poor country I came from, it was a fortune. I could help my family in a way that was previously unimaginable. And the company, the Norwegian Cruise Line, was a huge surprise. You realize once on board that the paltry contracts they sign in countries like mine, because they know there are countries where there's a lot of abuse and people accept anything just to get out, that contract, once you're on board, they explain to you. They tell you it was just a paper necessary to get you a work visa under disguise, and then they make you sign a new contract for a real value, much, 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 much better. A dignified salary, with rights, with schedules, with respect. It was a lesson in humanity and business ethics I never forgot. And so began my years on the cruise ships. Working hard, yes, but happy and content. Every port was a fulfillment of a dream of that child who looked at the sky waiting to see a plane pass. And now, I wasn't just on the plane, I had learned to fly without it. From a black and white television to the blue horizon of the ocean, I learned that dreams aren't inherited, they're built. If you've ever looked at the sky wanting more, this channel is your home. Welcome to Confessions of the Soul. Here, stories aren't told, they're felt.
This story is real. It's mine. It began as a script for a YouTube video. But today, at 53 years old and more than 20 years since I last sailed, the memories come to me, dusting off thanks I never gave. To a receptionist whose name I never knew. To Maria Elena, the woman who gave me a chance without knowing me or asking for anything in return. To Alex Picard, who broke down his wall of power for me. To Ricardo, who helped me move to bigger ships with new contracts. To my family, and to so many people who in those small, important moments of my life helped bring me closer to fulfilling my dreams without even knowing what we were achieving in that moment. Thank you.